Find yourself another seat. This table is reserved for real family, not charity cases. My sister Jessica's voice cut through the upscale dining room of the Sterling Room, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Laughter rippled around the table. My parents, my brother Marcus, and Jessica's husband all joining in as though she'd delivered the punchline of the century. I stood there clutching my purse, my cheeks burning with shame as nearby diners turned to stare. The crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the pristine white linens and gleaming silverware, but all I felt was cold emptiness. My name is Emma, and I'm 27 years old. I've lived with this family for 22 years, ever since they adopted me at age 5. 22 years of being reminded I didn't truly belong, that I was different, that I was somehow less. The only person who ever made me feel valued was Grandma Eleanor, my adoptive mother's mother, who sat at the far end of the table watching with an unreadable expression. "Jessica, that's enough," I said quietly, trying to salvage whatever dignity I had left. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," my mother Caroline chimed in, waving her perfectly manicured hand dismissively. "We're only teasing. You know how Jessica is." I knew exactly how Jessica was. At 32, she'd perfected the art of making me feel insignificant while maintaining the appearance of family harmony. Growing up, she got the master bedroom, designer wardrobes, and a full ride to an Ivy League university. I got hand-me-downs in community college. She got praised for average accomplishments. I got criticized for excellence. "Sit down, Emma," my father Richard ordered. "You're causing a scene." I sat, swallowing the words rising in my throat. This dinner was supposedly to celebrate Jessica's latest business deal, some real estate investment my parents had helped finance. They were always helping Jessica. When I'd asked for a small loan to launch my graphic design business 3 years ago, they'd laughed and told me to be more realistic. The evening crawled forward with conversation flowing around me as if I were invisible. Jessica bragged about her new Tesla. Marcus discussed his promotion at the investment firm. My parents beamed with pride, asking questions and offering congratulations. When I tried to mention landing a major client, a contract worth $50,000, my mother cut me off mid-sentence. "That's nice, sweetheart. Marcus, tell us more about that promotion bonus." By the time dessert arrived, I'd retreated into familiar numbness. This was my role, the outsider, the charity case, the one they kept around to feel virtuous about themselves. Then the waiter approached with the check, placing the leather folder directly in front of me. I stared at it, confused. "What's this?" Jessica's laugh was sharp and crystalline. "Oh, didn't we mention? You're covering dinner tonight. Consider it your contribution to the family, since you're always taking and never giving back." "Taking?" The word came out strangled. "I've never asked you for anything." The roof over your head growing up, the food, the clothes. Caroline ticked off items on her fingers. "We gave you everything, Emma. The least you can do is buy us one dinner." My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The total made my vision blur. $3,185. They'd ordered the most expensive wines, multiple appetizers, premium steaks, Maine lobster. Marcus had ordered 3 desserts simply because he could. "I can't afford this," I whispered. "Of course you can," Jessica said sweetly. "You just told us about your big client. $50,000, wasn't it? This is nothing to you now." The truth was that $50,000 was spread over 6 months of work, with most already allocated to business expenses, rent, and student loans my family had refused to help with. This single dinner would drain my savings completely, but I couldn't make another scene. Couldn't give them more ammunition to call me ungrateful, difficult, or dramatic. With shaking hands, I pulled out my credit card and placed it in the folder. The waiter swept it away while I forced myself to smile, to sip my water, to pretend this wasn't devastating me. Jessica was already discussing their upcoming vacation to the French Riviera. My parents were planning to join them. Nobody asked if I wanted to come. They never did. When the waiter returned with my card and receipt, I signed with numb fingers. $3,485 for the privilege of being humiliated by people who were supposed to love me. Well, that was lovely, Caroline said, dabbing her lips with her napkin. Same time next month? Next month. They expected this to become regular. I opened my mouth to protest, to finally say enough was enough, when a voice cut through the chatter. Just a moment, please. Everyone fell silent. Grandma Eleanor, who'd been quiet all evening, was standing at her end of the table. At 78, she still commanded attention, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture ramrod straight. Something in her expression made my chest tighten. Grandma Eleanor had always been different from the rest of the family. While my parents and siblings treated me like an obligation, she'd been the one who attended my school plays, remembered my birthday, and asked about my dreams. She was also the wealthiest person I'd ever known, a self-made billionaire who'd built a biotechnology empire from nothing. But lately, she'd been quieter, watching. I'd noticed her observing family gatherings with an intensity that made me wonder what she was thinking. "Mother, what is it?" Caroline asked, irritation creeping into her voice. "We were about to leave. Sit down, all of you." Grandma Eleanor's voice carried an authority that made even my father straighten in his chair. "I have something to say, and you're going to listen." Jessica rolled her eyes but remained seated. Marcus checked his phone under the table. My parents exchanged confused glances. Grandma Eleanor's gaze swept across each of them before landing on me. Something flickered in her eyes. Sadness, perhaps, or disappointment in everyone else. "I've been watching this family for years," she began, her voice steady but cold. "Watching how you treat Emma, how you've always treated her." "Mother, really?" Caroline protested. "This isn't the time." "Be quiet." The command was so sharp my mother actually obeyed. "I'm 78 years old, and I've spent the past few months thinking about my legacy. About where my fortune should go when I'm gone." The table went completely still. My father's fork clinked against his plate as he set it down. Jessica's smug expression faltered. "We all know how this works," Grandma Eleanor continued. "The bulk of my estate goes to Caroline, then distributed among the grandchildren. That's what my current will says." I watched Jessica's face light up with greed. She'd been counting on that inheritance for years, making extravagant purchases and investments based on money she didn't yet have. "But I've had my attorney draw up a new will." Grandma Eleanor pulled an envelope from her purse, signed and notarized yesterday. The silence was suffocating. "You can't be serious," Marcus said. "You're changing your will because of what? A stupid joke? A joke?" Grandma Eleanor's laugh was bitter. "I've watched you all mock and belittle Emma for over 2 decades. I've watched you exclude her, humiliate her, treat her like she's less than human. And tonight, you made her pay for your extravagance while you laughed about it. We were just having fun," Jessica protested, but her voice wavered. "Fun?" Grandma Eleanor repeated the word like it was poison. "You think cruelty is fun? You think making someone feel worthless is entertainment?" My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Grandma Eleanor walked slowly around the table until she stood beside me. Her hand rested gently on my shoulder. "Emma is the only one in this family who's shown true character," she said. "She's worked for everything she has. Built a business from nothing with no help from any of you. She's kind, talented, and resilient despite your best efforts to break her spirit." "Mother, you're being dramatic," Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Grandma Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Caroline, when was the last time you asked Emma about her life? Really asked and actually listened to the answer?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. "Marcus, have you ever congratulated your sister on her accomplishments? Ever acknowledged her success?" My brother stared at his plate. "Jessica, have you spent even one day treating Emma like family instead of a servant?" My sister's face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. Grandma Eleanor looked at each of them, her disappointment evident. "You've all failed spectacularly. You took in a little girl who'd lost everything, and instead of giving her love and support, you've spent 22 years making her pay for kindness you never actually showed." The weight of her words settled over the table like a heavy blanket. Other diners had stopped pretending not to listen. Waitstaff hovered at a distance, sensing the drama. "So here's what's going to happen," Grandma Eleanor said, her voice gaining strength. "My entire estate, every dollar, every property, every investment is going to Emma." The explosion was immediate. "What?" Jessica shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You can't do that. That's not fair." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "Grandmother, think about what you're saying." "You're talking about billions of dollars," Caroline pleaded. "Emma isn't even really family." "Stop." Grandma Eleanor's command silenced them again. "Emma is more family than any of you have ever been. She's earned this, not through blood, but through character. Through being a better person than all of you combined." I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. Billions of dollars? Grandma Eleanor's entire fortune. It was impossible, unreal, too enormous to comprehend. "You're being manipulated," Richard said desperately. "Emma must have done something." "Emma has done nothing but survive your abuse," Grandma Eleanor cut him off. "And that ends tonight." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "David, it's Eleanor. Yes, file the new will immediately. Make sure it's ironclad. And prepare the trust documents for Emma." My family's faces ranged from shock to fury to disbelief. Jessica looked like she might actually faint. Marcus's face had gone purple. My parents seemed to age a decade in seconds. "This isn't over," Jessica hissed at me. "We'll contest it. We'll fight you in court." "Try it," Grandma Eleanor said calmly. "I've made sure everything is completely legal. I'm of sound mind, as medical evaluations from this morning confirm." She'd planned this. Every detail. The explosion that followed was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Jessica lunged across the table, her face contorted with rage. Marcus grabbed her arm, but his own anger was barely contained. My parents sat in stunned silence, their carefully constructed world crumbling. "You manipulative little—" Jessica snarled at me. "Enough." Grandma Eleanor stepped between us. "Emma has done nothing wrong. She didn't even know about this until now." It was true. I was still reeling, my mind unable to grasp what had just happened. "Why are you doing this?" Caroline's voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "I'm your daughter, your blood. And you should be ashamed of how you've acted," Grandma Eleanor replied, her voice softer but still firm. "I gave you every advantage in life, Caroline. Education, opportunities, love. And you took all of that and learned nothing about compassion or kindness. Instead, you passed your cruelty down to your own children." Richard tried a different approach. "Let's be reasonable. We can work this out. Maybe split the estate? There's nothing to work out," Grandma Eleanor said. "The decision is made. My attorneys have everything in order. The trust is established. Emma will receive everything when I pass, with immediate access to certain accounts starting tomorrow." Tomorrow? The word hung in the air. This wasn't some future promise. This was real, immediate, happening now. Marcus leaned forward, his voice low and threatening. "You're making a huge mistake. Emma doesn't know how to handle that kind of money. She'll blow through it in a year. Emma has built a successful business from nothing," Grandma Eleanor interrupted. "She's more financially responsible at 27 than any of you have ever been. She's had to be because you never helped her." I found my voice shaky and uncertain. "Grandma, I don't understand." "Why now?" She turned to me, her expression softening. "Because I've watched you suffer long enough, sweetheart." She paused, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, pain beneath the composure. "I'm dying." The world tilted. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, probably less." She said it so calmly, but I saw the truth beneath. I found out 3 months ago, and I've spent that time getting my affairs in order. Making sure my legacy goes to someone who deserves it. Tears blurred my vision. Grandma Eleanor was dying. The one person who'd ever truly loved me was leaving. "Oh, don't cry, Emma." She pulled me into a hug, and I breathed in her familiar perfume, lavender and rose. "This isn't sad. This is justice." Around us, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen noise had died down. Everyone was watching this family implode in real time. You can't be serious about this. Caroline tried again, desperation making her voice shrill. Mother, please. Think about your grandchildren. Think about the family legacy. I am thinking about it, Grandma Eleanor said. That's exactly why I'm doing this. The family legacy should be compassion, hard work, and integrity. Emma embodies all of that. The rest of you embody greed, cruelty, and entitlement. Jessica's hands were shaking. We'll sue. We'll prove you're not in your right mind. Good luck with that. Grandma Eleanor's smile was sharp. I have medical evaluations, psychological assessments, and testimony from dozens of witnesses about your treatment of Emma over the years. My attorney has been documenting everything for months. She'd been planning this carefully, methodically, protecting me even as her own time ran short. I want to go home, I whispered. Of course. Grandma Eleanor kept her arm around me. David is outside with the car. He'll take us both to my place. We have a lot to discuss. As we turned to leave, Marcus blocked our path. This isn't fair. She's not even really one of us. Move, Grandma Eleanor's voice was ice, or I'll have security remove you. He stepped aside, but the hatred in his eyes made me flinch. We walked through the restaurant in silence, every eye following us. The cool New York air hit my face as we stepped outside, and I gulped it down, trying to steady myself. A sleek black car waited at the curb. David, Grandma Eleanor's driver of 30 years, opened the door with a knowing smile. Miss Emma, welcome. David knows everything, Grandma Eleanor said as we slid into the back seat. He's been helping me plan this for weeks. The car pulled away from the restaurant, leaving my family, my former family, standing on the sidewalk in shock. Through the rear window, I saw Jessica screaming something, her face twisted with rage. Marcus was on his phone, probably calling an attorney. My parents stood together, looking lost and broken. I should have felt something. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But all I felt was numb exhaustion mixed with a strange sense of freedom. Are you really dying? I asked Grandma Eleanor, my voice small. Yes. She took my hand, her skin paper-thin, but her grip surprisingly strong. But I'm not afraid. I've lived a full life, Emma. Built an empire, raised a family, made my mark. Now I get to ensure that everything I've worked for goes to someone worthy. I don't know if I can do this, I admitted. I don't know how to be wealthy. I don't know how to run your companies. You'll learn, she said confidently. You're smart, hardworking, and you have good instincts. And you'll have an excellent team to guide you. I've made sure of that. The city lights blurred past the window as we drove toward her estate in the Upper East Side. What happens now? I asked. Now? Grandma Eleanor squeezed my hand. Now we prepare you for your new life. And we make absolutely certain that your family can never hurt you again. The next morning, I woke in one of Grandma Eleanor's guest rooms, momentarily disoriented by the silk sheets and the view of Central Park through floor-to-ceiling windows. Then the memories crashed back. The restaurant, the bill, the announcement, everything. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I'd turned it back on. 43 missed calls from Jessica, 27 from my mother, 16 from Marcus, and dozens of texts ranging from pleading to threatening. I scrolled through them with strange detachment. You're being selfish. Think about the family. Caroline, I'll destroy you in court. You won't see a penny. Jessica, we need to talk. This can still be fixed. Richard Grandma's clearly not thinking straight. Help us get her evaluated. Marcus I set the phone down and walked to the window. Grandma Eleanor's penthouse sprawled across the entire top floor of the building. The morning sun glinted off the park, joggers already dotting the paths. This was mine now. Or would be soon. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Miss Emma, breakfast is ready, and Miss Eleanor would like to see you in the study. I found Grandma Eleanor sitting behind an enormous mahogany desk, looking surprisingly energetic despite yesterday's revelation about her health. David stood nearby, and a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit sat across from her. Emma, this is David Chen, my attorney, Grandma Eleanor said. We need to go over some things. David stood, shaking my hand with a firm grip. Miss Emma, it's a pleasure. Your grandmother has spoken very highly of you. I sat down, feeling like I was in a dream. David opened a leather portfolio and began explaining details: the trust, the companies, the investments. Numbers that seemed impossible swam before my eyes. $3 billion in liquid assets, $5 billion in property and investments, stakes in biotechnology companies, real estate developments, tech startups. The immediate access accounts activate today, David explained. $5 million for your personal use while the trust is being finalized. Your grandmother wanted to ensure you had resources right away. $5 million for immediate use. I felt dizzy. There's more, Grandma Eleanor said, her eyes sharp. Your family will try to contest this. They'll claim undue influence, diminished capacity, anything they can think of. We need to be prepared. What can they actually do? I asked. David leaned forward. Legally, not much. Miss Eleanor has documentation proving her sound mind, including evaluations from 3 separate doctors. The will is ironclad. However, they can make the process difficult, drag it out in court, create negative publicity. Let them try, Grandma Eleanor said firmly. I've been documenting their treatment of Emma for years. Every cruel comment, every exclusion, every incident of financial abuse. If they want a court battle, I'll bury them with evidence. My phone buzzed again. Jessica. I silenced it. There's something else you need to know, Grandma Eleanor said, and something in her tone made me tense. Your adoption wasn't quite what you think it was. The room seemed to tilt. What do you mean? She pulled a folder from her desk drawer, sliding it across to me. When Caroline and Richard adopted you, they received a substantial sum of money. $800,000 to be exact. It was meant to cover your care, education, everything you'd need growing up. I stared at the documents in the folder. Bank statements, transfer records. They took money for adopting me? From a trust set up by your birth parents, Grandma Eleanor confirmed. They died in a car accident when you were 5. They'd established a trust to ensure you were cared for. Caroline and Richard were approved as adoptive parents and given access to those funds. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers. $800,000. And I'd worn secondhand clothes, gone to community college on student loans, been told the family couldn't afford to help me. They spent it all, I whispered, seeing the account statements. Vacations, cars, Jessica's private school tuition, Marcus's college fund. They spent my money on everyone but me. Yes, Grandma Eleanor said quietly. I only discovered this myself 2 years ago. I've been investigating since then, gathering evidence. That's theft, Emma. They stole from a child. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else. It wasn't just cruelty or favoritism. They'd profited from my loss, taken money meant for my care, and used it to spoil their biological children while treating me like a burden. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Because I needed to be sure. Needed all the documentation perfect and legal? She paused, looking older suddenly. And because I knew that once you learned the truth, there would be no going back. Your relationship with them, toxic as it was, would be over completely. She was right. Any tiny part of me that had hoped for reconciliation, that had wondered if maybe I was too sensitive or ungrateful, died in that moment. They hadn't just been cruel. They'd been criminals. What do I do? I felt lost, overwhelmed. You let me handle it, Grandma Eleanor said. David has already filed a civil suit against Caroline and Richard for misappropriation of trust funds. With interest over 22 years, they owe you approximately $2.4 million. My phone exploded with calls again. This time it was my father. Answer it, Grandma Eleanor said. Put it on speaker. Let's hear what he has to say. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. Emma. Richard's voice was desperate. Emma, please. We need to talk. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly. She seems perfectly clear to me, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. This is insane. You can't possibly think you deserve her entire fortune. You've been with us for 22 years, and suddenly you turn on us the moment money is involved? The moment money is involved? I repeated. You mean like the $800,000 you took for adopting me? The money you spent on everyone except me? Silence. Then, I don't know what lies she's been telling you. Bank records don't lie, Dad. The word felt bitter. David has all the documentation. You stole from me. You both did. Caroline's voice came through the phone, shrill with panic. That money was for raising you, for housing you, feeding you. You gave me hand-me-downs and made me pay my own way through college, I said. Meanwhile, Jessica got designer clothes and a full ride to Columbia. Marcus got a new BMW at 16. I got nothing. You're being ungrateful, Richard tried. We gave you a home, you gave me a prison, I said. The words felt powerful, liberating. You made me feel worthless every single day, and you did it while spending money that was meant for me. We'll fight this, Caroline threatened. We'll take you to court. Please do, Grandma Eleanor cut in. I'd love to see you explain the financial records to a judge. Explain how you took money meant for a grieving 5-year-old and spent it on luxury vacations. The call ended abruptly. They'd hung up, probably to call their own attorney. David's hand rested on my shoulder. Miss Emma, I know this is overwhelming, but you need to understand. You hold all the cards here. They have no legal ground to stand on. They'll try anyway, I said. Of course they will, Grandma Eleanor agreed. But they'll lose. And when they do, you'll never have to see them again. 3 days later, the story hit the media. Somehow, and I suspected Jessica was behind it, details of Grandma. Eleanor's will change had leaked to the press. Billionaire disinherits family for adopted. Granddaughter, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with reporters, wanting statements. I'd moved into Grandma Eleanor's penthouse temporarily, unable to face my apartment where my family knew the address. David had retrieved my things, and I was living in a strange bubble of luxury and chaos. The public reaction was divided. Some praised Grandma Eleanor for rewarding character over blood. Others called me a manipulative gold digger who'd seduced an elderly woman for her fortune. The comment sections were brutal. She must have been sleeping with the old woman's lawyer or something gold digger alert. This girl knew exactly what she was doing. Good for Eleanor. Family isn't blood. It's how you treat people. That adopted girl is going to blow through billions in a year. Watch. I tried to ignore it, but the words burrowed under my skin. Was I wrong to accept this? Should I have refused Grandma Eleanor's gift? Stop reading those, Grandma Eleanor said, finding me hunched over my laptop in the library. She looked frailer than she had days ago, the cancer clearly progressing. People will always have opinions. Let them talk. They're calling me terrible things, I said. They called me terrible things when I built my first company, she replied, settling into the chair beside me. Said I was too aggressive, too masculine, too ambitious. A woman couldn't possibly succeed in biotechnology. I proved them wrong. She took my hand, her grip weaker now. You'll prove them wrong too, Emma. Not by defending yourself, but by being exactly who you are. Kind, hardworking, principled. That afternoon, David arrived with news. Caroline and Richard have officially filed to contest the will. They're claiming diminished capacity and undue influence. Let me see, Grandma Eleanor said. David handed over the legal documents. I read over her shoulder, my anger building with every word. They claimed I'd isolated Grandma Eleanor from her family, that I'd manipulated a sick elderly woman, that I'd taken advantage of her declining mental state. This is ridiculous, I said. I didn't even know about the cancer until that night. We have evidence proving otherwise, David assured me, including testimony from medical staff, friends, business associates. They're grasping at straws. But something in David's expression made me nervous. What aren't you telling me? He exchanged a glance with Grandma Eleanor. Jessica has hired a private investigator. They're digging into your background, looking for anything they can use against you. My stomach dropped. There's nothing to find. We know that, Grandma Eleanor said. But they'll try to create something. Twist innocent situations. Take things out of context. As if on cue, my phone rang. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Emma! It's so good to finally reach you. The voice was unfamiliar, syrupy sweet. I'm Jennifer Martinez from New York Scene magazine. I'd love to chat about your relationship with Eleanor. No comment, I said, moving to hang up. Wait, I just have a few questions about the allegations. What allegations? About your business. There are questions about where you got your startup capital. Some people are suggesting Eleanor funded it years ago, that you've been planning this takeover for a long time. My blood ran cold. That's not true. I built my business with my own money. Can you prove that? Do you have documentation? I hung up, my hands shaking. They're trying to create a narrative, David said grimly. That you've been grooming Eleanor for years. That everything you've accomplished was really her money. But it wasn't. I have loan documents, business records. We know, Grandma Eleanor soothed. And we'll prove it. But Emma, you need to prepare yourself. This is going to get worse before it gets better. She was right. By evening, social media was flooded with theories. Anonymous accounts, probably my family, were spreading rumors. That I'd failed out of community college. I'd graduated with honors. That my business was failing, it was thriving. That I'd had multiple affairs with wealthy older men. I'd barely dated in years. The cruelest rumor was that I'd somehow caused my birth parents' death to access their trust fund. I was 5 years old when they died, but facts didn't matter to internet trolls. I closed my laptop feeling sick. Miss Emma. David appeared at the library door. There are reporters at the building entrance. Quite a few of them. I walked to the window overlooking the street. News vans lined the block. Cameras pointed at the building. My private life was now public spectacle. This is what they want, I said quietly. They want me to crack. To do something that makes me look bad. Then don't give them the satisfaction, Grandma Eleanor said. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were still fierce. We fight this the right way. With truth, with evidence, with dignity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying moments from my childhood. Caroline telling me I was lucky they'd taken me in. Jessica laughing when I didn't get invited to her sweet 16. Marcus pushing me into the pool at a family gathering while everyone laughed. Every moment of exclusion, every casual cruelty, all building to this moment. Around 2 a.m, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. We'll destroy you. J. Jessica, threatening me from a burner phone. I screenshot it and sent it to David evidence. Grandma Eleanor had taught me well. The next morning brought a new development. Marcus showed up at the building, somehow talking his way past security. I found him in the lobby arguing with David's security team. I need to see Emma, he was saying. Please, it's important. It's okay, I said, though my heart was racing. I'll talk to him. Marcus looked terrible. Unshaven, his clothes wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. Nothing like the polished investment banker I'd grown up with. Emma, please, he said. We need to fix this. The family is falling apart. The family fell apart a long time ago, I said. You're just noticing now because money's involved. That's not fair. I know we weren't always. I know we could have been better to you. But this, he gestured around. Cutting us out completely? That's too far? Too far? My voice rose despite my attempt to stay calm. Marcus, you pushed me into a pool when I was 12 and I nearly drowned because I didn't know how to swim. Nobody taught me because swimming lessons were for real family. Jessica told everyone at school I was adopted because my real parents didn't want me. Mom forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. Dad told me I should be grateful for scraps. And you all spent $800,000 that was meant for me while I worked 3 jobs to pay for community college. Marcus's face went white. I didn't know about that money. I swear, you didn't know because you never asked. None of you ever asked about me, about my life, about whether I was okay. The words poured out. Years of pain finally finding voice. You want to fix the family? There's nothing to fix. It was broken from the start. Emma, please. Get out. My voice was steady now, cold. Get out of this building and don't come back. You're making a mistake, Marcus said, but there was no conviction in it. When Grandma's gone, you'll have no one. I already had no one, I said. At least now I'll have resources to build an actual life. Security escorted Marcus out. Through the window, I watched my brother walk to his car, shoulders slumped. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a pang of something. Not quite guilt, but a sad acknowledgement of what could have been if they'd chosen differently. That afternoon, David called an emergency meeting. His expression was grave. "Jessica's legal team has found something," he said. Or rather, they claim to have found something. "They're alleging that you forged documents related to your business, specifically contracts with clients. They're trying to paint you as dishonest, someone capable of manipulating Eleanor." "That's insane," I said. "All my contracts are legitimate. We know that. But they're filing a motion to delay the will proceedings pending an investigation. It's a stall tactic, but it could work." Grandma Eleanor's hand slammed on the desk, startling us both. Despite her frailty, anger gave her strength. "Absolutely not. David, file an emergency motion to expedite. I want this settled before—" She didn't finish the sentence. "Before she died." "Eleanor, you should rest," David began. "I'll rest when this is done," she snapped. "My granddaughter is being attacked by vultures masquerading as family. We end this now." David nodded and pulled out his phone, stepping away to make calls. Grandma Eleanor turned to me, her eyes fierce despite the exhaustion evident in her face. "Emma, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I'm holding a press conference tomorrow. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. About the stolen money, the abuse, everything. But I need you to be there with me. The world needs to see you, hear from you directly." Terror gripped me. "I can't. I'll say something wrong." You'll be perfect," she said firmly. "Because you'll tell the truth. That's all you need to do." That night, I barely slept again. I kept rehearsing what I might say, then abandoning it. How do you sum up 22 years of pain in a few minutes? How do you make strangers understand? The press conference was scheduled for 2:00 in the afternoon at Grandma Eleanor's downtown office. When David drove us there, the media presence was overwhelming. Cameras everywhere. Reporters shouting questions, crowds of onlookers documenting everything on their phones. David had prepared a statement, but when I looked at Grandma Eleanor, really looked at her, I saw how much this was costing her. She was dying, using her last reserves of strength to fight for me. The conference room was packed. Cameras rolling, lights bright, the air thick with anticipation. Grandma Eleanor sat beside me at a long table, David on her other side. She looked small but unbreakable. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice surprisingly strong. "I'm here to address the rumors and allegations surrounding my will and my granddaughter Emma." She laid it all out. The documentation of abuse, the stolen trust fund money, years of emotional and financial manipulation. She showed bank records, medical evaluations proving her sound mind, testimony from witnesses. It was methodical, devastating, irrefutable. "Some have suggested Emma manipulated me," Grandma Eleanor said, her gaze sweeping the room. "The truth is the opposite. My biological family manipulated her. They took a grieving 5-year-old child and used her as a punching bag for their own inadequacies. They stole from her, belittled her, made her feel worthless. Despite all of that, Emma built a life, a successful business. She became kind, compassionate, hardworking, everything they are not." Then she gestured to me. "Emma would like to say a few words." My mouth went dry. Every eye in the room was on me. I could see the judgment, the curiosity, the skepticism. I cleared my throat. "I don't know what to say that my grandmother hasn't already said. I never wanted this attention. I never wanted to be wealthy or famous or involved in legal battles." My voice steadied as I continued. "I just wanted a family that loved me. I wanted parents who cared if I was okay, siblings who celebrated my successes instead of mocking them. I wanted to belong somewhere." I looked directly at the cameras. "I know some of you think I'm a gold digger, that I manipulated a dying woman for money. But I didn't even know about the inheritance until that night at the restaurant. I didn't know my grandmother was sick. I didn't know about the stolen trust fund money. All I knew was that, once again, my family was humiliating me and demanding I pay for the privilege. Tears threatened, but I pushed through. My grandmother is giving me her fortune because she believes in who I am, not because I asked for it. And I'm going to honor that trust by being exactly who she sees. Someone who builds things, helps people, and refuses to be cruel, just because it's easier. The questions came fast and furious after that. Reporters shouting, cameras flashing, but David fielded them expertly, and Grandma Eleanor sat beside me, her hand finding mine under the table. As we were wrapping up, Jessica burst through the doors. Security moved to stop her, but she was already shouting, "This is all lies! She's brainwashed you all." Jessica's makeup was smeared, her designer dress wrinkled. She looked unhinged. "I'm the real victim here. That adopted brat has stolen my inheritance." The cameras swiveled to her, capturing every second of her meltdown. "Miss Jessica," a reporter called out, "what about the allegations that your parents stole trust fund money meant for Emma?" "That money was ours. We earned it by raising her ungrateful." "You earned $800,000 for treating a child like garbage?" another reporter asked. Jessica realized her mistake too late. The cameras had caught everything: her admission, her rage, her complete lack of remorse. "Get her out of here," David said to security, as Jessica was escorted out. Still screaming threats, I watched the reporters frantically typing on their phones. The narrative had just shifted. Jessica had given them the villain they needed, and it wasn't me. Grandma Eleanor squeezed my hand. "Well," she said quietly, "I don't think we could have planned that better if we tried." Despite everything, I almost smiled. Jessica had destroyed herself, and she'd done it on camera for the world to see. The video of Jessica's meltdown went viral within hours. By evening, it had been viewed over 10 million times. News outlets played it on loop, dissecting every word, every unhinged expression. Social media exploded with commentary. Did she really just admit they took money for raising an adopted kid? This family is toxic AF. Emma deserves everything. Jessica just destroyed her own case in under 60 seconds. Brilliant. That look on her face when she realized what she said where priceless public opinion shifted overnight. What had been a divided conversation became a landslide of support for me and condemnation for my family. Memes spread. Commentary videos analyzed the situation. Legal experts weighed in, all agreeing that Jessica's admission had essentially torpedoed any chance of contesting the will. I watched it all from Grandma Eleanor's study, still processing. David sat across from me looking pleased. "Their legal case just collapsed," he said. "Jessica's admission that they earned the trust fund money by raising you is essentially a confession to misappropriation of funds. Combined with the documentation we already have, they have no leg to stand on." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now their lawyers will try damage control, but it's too late. The court hearing is in 3 days. I'd be shocked if the judge doesn't rule in our favor immediately." He paused. "There's also the criminal aspect. The district attorney's office has reached out. They're considering fraud charges against Caroline and Richard. Criminal charges. My parents could go to prison." Grandma Eleanor entered the study, moving slowly with David's security chief supporting her arm. She'd declined rapidly since the press conference, the effort having drained her reserves. But her eyes were still sharp. "Don't look so worried," she said, settling into her chair. "They made their choices. Now they face the consequences." "They're still my parents," I said quietly. "Or they were supposed to be." "They were never your parents," Grandma Eleanor said firmly. "Parents protect their children, love them, support them. What Caroline and Richard did was exploitation, pure and simple." My phone buzzed. Another message. But this one made my blood run cold. "I know where you live now. This isn't over." J.I. showed it to David, who immediately made a call. "I'm getting a restraining order filed today and increasing security at the building." "She's desperate," Grandma Eleanor observed. "Desperate people do dangerous things." She was right. Over the next 2 days, Jessica's behavior became increasingly erratic. She showed up at my old apartment building, screaming at tenants. She posted long, rambling rants on social media, each one more unhinged than the last. She claimed I'd used mind control to manipulate Grandma Eleanor, that I was part of a conspiracy, that she was the real victim of elder abuse. Each post only made things worse for her. The public watched her self-destruct in real time, and any sympathy that might have existed evaporated. Marcus tried a different approach. He went on a local news program, presenting himself as the reasonable middle ground. "Look, I think there were mistakes made on both sides," he said earnestly to the camera. "Yes, maybe we weren't as welcoming to Emma as we should have been. But to cut the entire family out over childhood disagreements? That seems extreme." The interviewer wasn't buying it. "Mr. Marcus, are you aware that your parents received $800,000 intended for Emma's care, which they allegedly spent on your education and your sisters?" Marcus's composure cracked. That money was for the whole family. Emma benefited from it too. She wore hand-me-downs while your sister got designer clothes. She took out loans for community college while you attended Princeton fully funded. How exactly did she benefit? Marcus ended the interview early, but the damage was done. The public saw through him. My father tried yet another tactic, appealing to sympathy. He gave a tearful interview about how he'd loved me like a daughter, how this was breaking his heart, how families should forgive each other. "We made mistakes," Richard said, his voice breaking. "What parent hasn't? But to be cut off completely, to be accused of theft, it's destroying us. Caroline can barely get out of bed. Marcus's marriage is suffering. Jessica is having a breakdown, all because we weren't perfect." The interviewer, the same one who'd dismantled Marcus, showed no mercy. "Mr. Richard, you're describing what you did as not being perfect, but investigators have documented years of emotional abuse, financial exploitation, and systematic exclusion of Emma from family activities. This goes beyond imperfection. That's not abuse. That's just family dynamics. Every family has issues. Every family doesn't steal $800,000 from a child. My father walked out too. But my mother's approach was the most calculated. Caroline hired a PR firm and gave a carefully crafted interview to a sympathetic journalist. She wore a simple dress, minimal makeup, positioned herself in soft lighting. She cried at all the right moments. "I loved Emma from the moment we brought her home," Caroline said, dabbing her eyes. "She was this beautiful, broken little girl who'd lost everything. I wanted to give her a family, a home, love." She paused for effect. "Yes, we were stricter with her than with our biological children. Maybe that was wrong. But we were trying to prepare her for a hard world. We knew she'd face challenges as an adopted child, and we wanted her to be strong." The journalist ate it up. "And the money? That money was meant for her care, and that's what we used it for. Housing, food, utilities. Raising a child is expensive. Maybe we should have documented every expense, but we were a family, not a business." She looked directly into the camera. "Emma, if you're watching, please know I love you. I always have. Can we please just talk? Without lawyers, without the media. Just mother and daughter?" I watched the interview with Grandma Eleanor and David. When it ended, I felt sick. "She's good," David admitted. "This is the most sympathetic they've looked since this started." "She's a liar," I said flatly. "She never loved me. This is just another manipulation." "I know," Grandma Eleanor said, "but some people will believe her. The question is, do you care?" Did I thought about it. A week ago, I might have cared desperately. I'd have wanted everyone to know the truth, to see Caroline for what she really was. But now? "No," I said. "I don't care what strangers think. The people who matter know the truth." Grandma Eleanor smiled. "Good girl." The court hearing arrived on a gray New York morning. The courthouse was surrounded by media, protesters holding signs both for and against me, curiosity seekers hoping for a glimpse of the drama. David had arranged for us to enter through a private entrance, but I could still hear the noise outside. Grandma Eleanor looked frail in her wheelchair. We'd finally convinced her to use one, but her spine was still straight, her gaze fierce. I held her hand as we entered the courtroom. My family was already there. Caroline, Richard, Marcus, and Jessica sat at the defendant's table with their team of lawyers. Caroline had maintained the soft, sympathetic appearance from her interview. Richard looked tired and defeated. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. But Jessica stared at me with pure hatred. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Chen, entered, and everyone rose. This is a hearing regarding the will of Eleanor Hayes and the contest filed by Caroline Hayes and family, Judge Chen began. I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Counsel, your opening statements. The family's lawyer went first, a slick man named Robert Chen who argued that Grandma Eleanor had been unduly influenced, that her illness had impaired her judgment, that the will should be set aside in favor of the previous version. Then David stood. He didn't argue or plead. He simply presented facts. Bank records showing the stolen trust fund money, medical evaluations from 3 separate doctors confirming Grandma Eleanor's sound mind, testimony from business associates about her mental acuity, documentation of the abuse I'd suffered, photos, recordings, witness statements, and finally, Jessica's viral video confession. Your Honor, David concluded, this is not a case of undue influence. This is a case of a woman choosing to leave her estate to someone who deserves it, and a family angry that their victim has finally escaped their control. Caroline's lawyer tried to counter, but Judge Chen cut him off. I've seen enough, she said. The evidence is overwhelming. Miss Eleanor Hayes was clearly of sound mind when she executed her new will. The documentation of abuse is extensive and credible. And the admission by Jessica Hayes that the family earned money meant for Emma's care essentially confirms the allegations of financial exploitation. My heart began to race. Furthermore, Judge Chen continued, the behavior exhibited by the contesting parties during these proceedings, including threats, harassment, and public defamation, only reinforces that Miss Eleanor's decision was correct. A family that truly loved Emma would never have treated her this way, before or after the will change. Jessica stood up, unable to contain herself. You can't just sit down, Judge Chen commanded, or I'll hold you in contempt. Jessica sat, but her fury was palpable. I'm ruling in favor of the will as executed, Judge Chen declared. The contest is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering Caroline and Richard Hayes to pay restitution for the misappropriated trust funds, $800,000 plus interest over 22 years, totaling approximately $2.4 million. They have 90 days to pay in full, the courtroom erupted. Caroline collapsed in her chair, sobbing. Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Marcus put his head in his hands. Jessica started screaming obscenities until bailiffs escorted her out. I sat frozen, unable to process that it was over. We'd won, completely, decisively, irrevocably. Grandma Eleanor squeezed my hand. It's done, sweetheart. You're free. Media swarmed us as we left the courthouse, but David and his security team created a barrier. I heard the questions being shouted. How did I feel? What would I do with the money? Did I have a message for my family? But I didn't answer. I just helped Grandma Eleanor into the car and let David drive us away. Back at the penthouse, Grandma Eleanor was exhausted but satisfied. I can die happy now, she said, and the words hit me like a physical blow. Don't say that, I whispered. Please. Oh, Emma. She cupped my face with her thin hands. I'm not afraid. I got to see justice done. I got to know my fortune will be used for good. That's more than most people get. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Grandma Eleanor fade. She slipped in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes lost in memories. I stayed by her side, holding her hand, telling her about my plans for the foundation I wanted to start, something to help adopted children who were being abused or exploited. That's perfect, she murmured during one of her clearer moments. Help others like you. Break the cycle. I will, I promised. I'll make you proud. You already have. Her smile was peaceful. You survived them, Emma. You stayed kind when they were cruel. You worked hard when they tried to break you. You're everything I hoped you'd be. She died on a Tuesday morning, with me holding her hand and the sun streaming through the window. Her last words were, "Thank you for being my real family." I stayed with her for a long time after, crying for the woman who'd saved me, who'd loved me, who'd given me a future, the only grandmother I'd ever really had. The funeral was private, just me, David, his team, and a few of Grandma Eleanor's close friends. My family wasn't invited, though Caroline tried to crash it and was turned away by security. In the weeks that followed, the full transfer of assets was completed. I was now the sole heir to an $8 billion fortune. The number was still incomprehensible, but I was determined to honor Grandma Eleanor's legacy. The first thing I did was establish the Eleanor Hayes Foundation for Adopted Children. Not because it sounded good or made me look charitable, but because I knew firsthand how many kids were trapped in situations like mine. The foundation would provide legal support, counseling, emergency housing, and educational funding for adopted children suffering abuse or exploitation. The second thing I did was hire an excellent management team for Grandma Eleanor's companies. I wasn't ready to run billion-dollar corporations, but I could learn. I attended every meeting, asked questions, studied at night. Slowly, I began to understand the empire she'd built. My family's downfall was swift and brutal, unable to pay the $2.4 million in restitution. Caroline and Richard were forced to sell their townhouse, their cars, everything of value. They moved into a small apartment in Queens. Ironic, considering they'd always looked down on people they deemed beneath them. Richard faced fraud charges for the trust fund theft and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Caroline received 2 years. Marcus, who'd benefited from the stolen money through his education, was required to pay back his portion, approximately $450,000. His marriage collapsed under the financial strain, and last I heard, he was working 2 jobs to make the payments. But Jessica's fate was the most satisfying. Her viral meltdown had destroyed any credibility she had. Her husband divorced her, taking their apartment and most of their assets. She'd invested heavily in a cryptocurrency venture that failed spectacularly, leaving her deep in debt. The private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me was now suing her for unpaid fees. She'd tried to write a tell-all book, but publishers rejected it after fact-checkers found it full of lies. She'd attempted to start a podcast, but the comments were so brutal she deleted it. She'd even tried to reconcile with me, not out of genuine remorse, but desperate hope I'd give her money. I'd read her email once. "Emma, I know we had our differences, but we're still sisters. Family forgives family. I'm struggling right now, and I know you're doing well. Maybe we could meet for coffee? Talk about the past and build a future together?" I deleted it without responding. 6 months after Grandma Eleanor's death, I stood in the foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful building in Midtown Manhattan dedicated to helping children like I'd been. The walls were covered with photos of kids we'd already helped, stories of escape and new beginnings. David stood beside me, having accepted a position as the foundation's operations director. "Miss Eleanor would be proud," he said. "I hope so," I replied. My phone buzzed. Another message from my family. They never stopped trying. This one was from Marcus. "Emma, Mom and Dad are struggling. Dad's in prison. Mom's barely surviving. I know you're angry, but they're still your parents. Can't you find it in your heart to help?" I typed my response carefully. They were never my parents. They were people who took money to raise me and instead used me as a punching bag for their inadequacies. I owe them nothing, but I'll make you a deal. I'll donate the exact amount they stole from me, $800,000, to a fund helping adopted children escape abusive families, in their names. That's the only legacy they'll have. I hit send and blocked his number. A year later, I was featured in Forbes magazine, not as the adopted girl who inherited billions, but as a CEO, running multiple successful companies, and a growing foundation that had helped over 500 children. The article focused on my work, my vision, my accomplishments. There was a small mention of my family drama, but it was in the past now. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the victim anymore. Wasn't the gold digger or the manipulator. I was simply Emma, a woman who'd survived, thrived, and chosen to help others do the same. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that Jessica was working in retail, barely making ends meet. That Caroline, released from prison, was living in a women's shelter. That Richard was still incarcerated, his health failing. That Marcus was bankrupt. His expensive education worthless without the connections and money that had always propped him up. Part of me, the part that remembered being a hurt little girl, felt a twinge of something. Not quite satisfaction, not quite pity. Just acknowledgement that actions have consequences. That cruelty eventually circles back. My family never recovered from their fall. Jessica's attempts to rebuild her life repeatedly failed, each venture collapsing under the weight of her reputation and poor decisions. Caroline and Richard lived out their remaining years in poverty and isolation, their biological children too consumed with their own struggles to help. Marcus's pride never allowed him to accept jobs he deemed beneath him, keeping him perpetually on the edge of financial ruin. They'd built their lives on a foundation of cruelty and entitlement. And when that foundation crumbled, they had nothing left to stand on. As for me, I built something lasting from the ashes of that painful past. Each child the foundation saved, each life changed, each cycle of abuse broken. That was my real inheritance from Grandma Eleanor. Not the money, but the understanding that sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and watching them destroy themselves while you're busy building something beautiful. That was simply justice taking its natural course.